Shabbat Shalom. Today is the last day, the 8th day of the season of Tabernacles. And so it is a Shabbat. Though in the eyes of many, it is a Thursday, for those who are on Yah's calendar, it is a Shabbat, a annual Shabbat. Yah in the book of Bereshit, chapter 1 and verse 14, makes it clear that he had made the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they would speak to us by way of letting us know his calendar for the days and for the years. The days are for the feast days, and the years are for the Shemitah year and for the Jubilee. So we have heeded the word, and we have come to bring glory to Yah. Our subject today is the outstretched hand of Ethiopia, the outstretched hands of Ethiopia, because the word says in the book of Psalms that Ethiopia will one day stretch out its hand to Yah. And so we want to look at that today. As I indicated, the book of Bereshit is a significant book in the sense that it early made reference to Ethiopia. In chapter 2 and verse 13, we're told that the second river that flows from the Garden of Eden is that river Gihon that surrounds the whole of Ethiopia. So in that early part of the word of Yah, it links Ethiopia to the Garden of Eden, telling you that it's not only a land of water, but it is the progenitor of human life. And so we want to look at that. And when I speak of Ethiopia, it's worth noting that I'm speaking about biblical Ethiopia that includes Sudan, that includes Eritrea, that includes Djibouti and Ethiopia and Somali. That's the total structure of the Ethiopia that I am talking about. And the scholars today will tell you, and theologians, they say it's in the horn of Africa, the horn of Africa, by way of the shape that it makes at the peninsula. So that's what I'm talking about this morning. And so it intrigues me somewhat in that the word of Yah says that Ethiopia is surrounded by the river Gihon. And the Ethiopians for long have regarded the Gihon River to be that of the Nile River. Now, some of you may well know that the Nile is composed of two tributaries. You have the White Nile that runs through today Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And that runs all the way until it reaches Sudan. And so it merges at Sudan with the Blue Nile. And so that White Nile meets the Blue Nile. While the White Nile is longer than the Blue Nile has 80% of the water. And so those of you who have been following the development in Ethiopia, you will know that Ethiopia recently completed that great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam that cost about $5 billion. that will make Ethiopia a great power source in all of Africa because of that dam. That dam is quite capable of producing enough electricity and other things to supply the surrounding nations around, and it's greater than 3 times the capacity of the Uva Dam here in America. So I see here Ethiopia stretching out its hand economically in the last days, because that which began with Ethiopia in the east is now setting on the Western world. The sun rises in the east and it sets on the Western world. So what was in the beginning, so shall it be again. You see, Ethiopia is coming. And so we want to look at that kind of Ethiopia and see what Yah has in store for Ethiopia. But before we do that, I want you to join me in the book of Stephanos or Zephaniah. That's the book of Zephaniah. Zephaniah chapter 2. Zephaniah chapter 2. And Zephaniah, as you know, is a prophetic book, an end-time book, but he speaks not only of the times in which he lived, and also of the first coming of the Messiah, but he speaks also of the end time, the times in which we live. So it's an interesting book. And I want to start at chapter 2, because here we see that Yah is speaking to a few nations, because the day of Yah has come, or his coming, and he is here to balance the book. Yah watches all that is happening in the earth, and then he makes wrongs right. And he points out here the nations that he has a concern with and what he will do with them in chapter 2. I want you to know also that Stephanos, as we have learned here in chapter 1, that he is the son of Cushi. He's a Cushite. And the son of Gedaliah, who was governor of Judah at one time during the siege of Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, in Jerusalem. And Amayah, son of Hezekiah, in the days of Josiah, son of Ammon, suffering of Judah. So he gives us 4 stages of his lineage, telling you that he is a relative of King Hezekiah. That means he's straight out of the line of the house of David. He wants you to know that. This is a royal prophet, and he's a Cushite prophet. It's quite evident in the word. So I just want to make that clear, because certain teachers have sought to ignore that as if it didn't exist. So this is a Cushite royal prophet here speaking. And in chapter 2, he says, gather together, O nation without shame. Before the law gives birth, the days shall pass on like chaff, before the burning wrath of Yah comes upon you, before the day of wrath of Yahweh comes upon you. Seek Yahweh, all you meek ones of the earth, who have done is right ruling. Seek righteousness, seek meekness, if so, be that you are hidden in the day of Yah's wrath. The plea is here from the prophet, seek righteousness. So if any should ask you, do you believe in righteousness by faith? You should answer, is there another kind of righteousness? So the prophet here is pleading for us to seek righteousness. Why? He goes on to tell you, because over the last several months, in fact, it's been a year now since we have read and seen on TV the attack that took place on the 7th of October in 2023 over there in the Promised Land. And people have spoken variously, some intuitively, some counterintuitively, and some foolishly, because they have spoken their own words and not what Yahweh has said in relation to the situation. Now, we understand something about prophecy is this, that prophecy is not just something is said and it's fulfilled and therefore that's it. No, prophecy is a cycle. It happened once, twice, 3 times, and it goes on until there is this ultimate fulfillment of it. That's what prophecy is. It's a cycle. And so as you read through the scriptures, you will see that Gaza, for example, has been ravaged many times by different nations. But we're talking about there is going to be a ultimate fulfillment of that land, that strip of land we call Gaza. You know, when we think of Gaza, I'm not sure what picture we have in our minds, but we're talking current day, a land that is about 26 miles long and about 5 miles wide. And it houses over 2 million people. It's densely populated. And Yahweh is seeking here to speak to the people living there. Come with me. In verse 4, he said, for Gaza, that's Gaza, is abandoned and Ashkelon laid waste. Ashdod is driven out at noonday and Ekron is uprooted. Woe to the main inhabitants of the seacoast, the nation of the Kerethites. The word of Yahweh is against you, O Canaan, land of the Philistines, and I shall destroy you so that there is no inhabitant. Let's hold it there. Yah here is speaking to 4 nations. The first one he talks about is the Philistines, the Palestinians. The Roman gave the Philistine this name, the Palestinian. And so Yah is here saying, I'm going to destroy you. This being the word of Yah, and should it be the ultimate fulfillment of the prophecy here of the royal prophet, the question is, who is speaking? Yah is speaking. And should we not understand, if Yah is speaking, those thoughts that we have conceived about what happened a year ago, make sure they're in context with what Yah says. All these cities here that Yah mentioned here They are cities that belong to the ancient Philistines. You remember Ashdod? If you read in the book of Samuel, Ashdod was the place where they took the ark of Yah during the time of Eli and put it in the house of Dagon. The next morning they came out, Dagon was on his face before the ark of Yah. Yah said, I'm going to deal with these places. And the United Nations and others look on and they utter all kind of words without making reference to the word of Yah. And the seacoast shall be pastures, shepherds, meadows, and enclosures for flocks. He said, I'm going to reduce it to rubble. That's what the word of Yah said. He is going to reduce it to rubble because he has come now. The wrath of Yah has come, and he's going to make good of that which has gone wrong. And he's speaking here in the context of what he had previously said to Judah. He said, I'm going to be a lion to Ephraim, that's Israel, and a young lion to Judah. Now, if you have a choice of being attacked, you would prefer to be attacked by a young lion rather than a grown lion. And so he attacked Ephraim as a lion, a grown lion, and the Assyrians came and took them away, and they never came back. And Judah, as you know, went to Babylon and spent 70 years down there. But he said, I'm going to return them back. So he goes on. He said, I have heard the reproach of Moab. Hear what he's saying, He's saying these nations that surround you, Israel, and again, I must emphasize the point, when I'm talking about Israel, I am talking about a Israel that serves Yah, the Israel of Yah, that's in Galatians 6:16, the people who recognize the Messiah. You cannot reject the Messiah and claim to have a relationship with the Father. Paul makes it very clear that he who is a Jew inwardly, not he who is a Jew outwardly. So when I speak of Israel, I'm speaking of those people ultimately who will be in the land serving Yah. I have heard of the reproach of Moab. He said, Moab is reproaching you. And the reviling of the children of Ammon, with which they have reproached my people and exalted themselves against the border. They have mocked you, even as Ishmael had mocked the promised seed, Yishak, Isaac. And he said, I'm going to deal with them for the mocking that they have dished out to my people, my dispersed ones. So part of what we're doing today is to establish who Israel is. Because when we read in Genesis chapter 1, we see Yahweh in his own way adjectivizing Ethiopia as a special people. That's what he's doing. And he's letting us know through King David that one day Ethiopia is going to stretch its hand out. Verse 9 of the same Zephaniah, it says, therefore, as I lived, declare Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Yisrael, Moab shall be like Sodom, and the children of Ammon like Omaro, that's Gomorrah, a possession for weeds, and the pit for salt, and the waste forever. The remnant of my people plunder them, and the rest of my nation possess them. All these nations, he says, I'm going to deal with. I'm going to repay them through my wrath for what they have done to my people. Now, I would invite you also to come with me to the book of Amos, and we will deal with chapter 9 and verse 7. The word says, are you not like the people of Cush to me, O children of Israel? Are you not the same to me as the children of the Ethiopian? Yeah, it's saying that. Declare, yeah, did I not bring up Israel from the land of Mitzrayim? I brought you up, Israel, from the land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Captor, and Aram from Ker. Did you get that? It says, at the same time, when Yah brought the children of Israel up from Egypt, he brought the Philistines from Captor, meaning they were living in Crete. They are not natives to the land. Yah is speaking through the prophet and saying, the Philistines are from Crete, they're from Captor, and I brought them up there. And when you read the scripture, you see that he brought them into the land at the same time to test the children of Israel, to test them. They will be unto them a scourge, a test. In Deuteronomy, he said, if you obey me, you will be to me kingdom of priests. Said that also in Exodus chapter 19, 5 and 6. But he says, if you disobey, I will bring you back on ships. Where? To Egypt. Meaning that he will bring them back in bondage. So Israel was going to be brought back on ships in bondage. Bondage, as I indicated, represents here Egypt, or Egypt represents bondage. And perhaps at this time, it's important to ask yourself, well, which other nation or groups of people have ever been taken on ships anywhere except the people of Africa? They were brought to the Americas, they were brought to Britain, to Brazil, to the Caribbeans. Why? Deuteronomy 28 tells us, because we departed from Yahweh. We departed. But he says, I'm going to bring you back. I'm going to bring you back. Right now, in Israel, we have people of African descent, approximately 200,000 in Israel right now. We have 170,000 Falasha Jews, people we know to be Jew, descendants of the king Menelik, through the relationship that his mother, the Queen of Sheba, had with King Solomon. We know that. Bona fide, certified, these are Jews. So we don't debate that. Now we have another 30,000 from Eritrea and Sudan seeking refuge, and who have not been given the title because people do not realize that these people were originally part of the biblical Ethiopia. And then we have another 3,000 people like those from America who recognize who they are, that they are descendants of the children of Israel, and they're over there too. But the law over in Israel don't give them the right as Jews. And so, why do you think way back from the 70s and through the 80s, they would here lift the Falashan Jews through Operation Moshe, Operation Moses, Operation Solomon, Operation Joshua, in 3 distinct periods of time? Falashan Jews, Beta Jews, House of Israel Jews were transported from Ethiopia to current day Israel. Why? Well, Yah says that he's going to round them up. He's going to round up his people and bring them home. So, we can conclude that Ethiopia has a divine mission, a divine prophetic mission. Oh, yes. And some have even concluded that Ethiopia is indeed the true Zion. Some have done that. So Ethiopia's spiritual architecture concretizes the idea that it's not just an ordinary country. Not at all. It is the progenitor of human life, being a significant place in history. And while Rome, the Catholic Church in 325, was conjecturing as to what books should be taken out of the canon of scriptures and which should remain, Ethiopia at that time had preserved the canon with 88 books, but they gave you 66. This morning, as we read from the book of the Maccabees, you can understand what they have done. They have stripped the canon bare. And we want you to know that Ethiopia had preserved the canon, preserved the word of Yah. And moreover, Ethiopia holds the view that they are the keeper of the Ark of the covenant. And they do so with a rectitude of great passion. They do that. Some have stated that the very topography of Ethiopia resembles Mount Sinai. And perhaps that when you hear that, you may think to yourself, how could that be? Well, it's very, very simple. And the way you reconcile that is to understand the relationship between Ethiopia and the Aksumite kingdom. The Aksumite kingdom ruled Egypt for several years. And at that time, the Aksumite kingdom included South Arabia in it, which is where Paul talks about the Mount Sinai of the Bible that is in Arabia. So it would have been within the context of the Aksumite kingdom. And we read of the king in the 12th century in Askum, the Askumite king, who erected 11 assemblies, 11 churches out of rock. I should say, he got them out of the rock. And 11 of them in Lalibela, that's the place, Lalibela region of Ethiopia, 11 rock-hewn churches, which are quite intriguing, because the idea was that he was going to make New Jerusalem in Ethiopia. And so we want to examine that this morning as we look at the significance of Ethiopia, because the word says that Ethiopia would one day stretch out. Let's read it. Come with me to the book of Psalm 68, and let's begin at verse 31. Princes shall come out of Egypt. Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her hands unto Yah. Sing unto Yah, ye kingdoms of the earth. I will sing praises unto Yah, Selah. To him that rideth upon the heavens of heavens, which were of old, lo, he that sent out his voice, and that mighty voice, ascribe ye strength unto Yah. His excellency is over Yeshayahu, and his strength is in the cloud. So Ethiopia is stretching out its hands to Yah, even now, as I indicated. In Isaiah 11 and 11, reading on to 12, it says, and it shall come to pass in that day that Yah shall set his hand. Hear me. Ethiopia is stretching out his hands to Yah. And in Isaiah, the prophet, this is another royal prophet, is telling you that Yah is also reaching out. What a greetings, isn't it? Ethiopia is stretching out his hands to Yah, and Yah is stretching out his hand, and he's going to pick up the people from where? Let's read again. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yah shall set his hand again a second time. He did it before, when he brought them from where? From Mitzrayim, that's in Egypt, to recover the remnant of the people. Did you get that? So let me explain that a little. Despite the fact that I told you the countries today that earlier comprised Ethiopia, it's not all of them will be part of the remnant. It says the remnant of that group, the remnant, there's parts of each nation that will be in the remnant. We cannot pre-select ourselves, as I have indicated in the past. It's Yah who knows the character of people. But he says he's going to recover the remnant of the people, which shall be left from Assyria. So he has a remnant in Assyria. And from Egypt, he has a remnant in Egypt, Pathros. And from Cush, there it is. I have a remnant in Ethiopia, and from Elam, that's Iran, and from Shinar, even from Babylon, and from Amath, and from the islands of the sea. And perhaps I will conjecture to say that must be the Caribbean, in the sense that a lot of the people were brought from West Africa and brought to the Caribbean. But he says, even though they have a root in Ethiopia, and some with the Negro Shemites, they have that root. So he said, I have a remnant, and I'm going to bring them back. So we see that there is a great deal of stretching from Ethiopia and from Yah. And so when you read in the scripture about stretching a hand, it's talking about freedom. It's talking about healing, and it's talking about deliverance. That's what Yah is talking about. And he's going to do that for Ethiopia. Now, as I indicated last week and previous to that, that many of the Negro Shemitic, that means they're descendants from Shem and not Am, Bronze Jews, migrated from Israel, and they went to West Africa, they went to Benin, they went to Ghana, they went to Guinea and all those areas, and they were picked up and brought to the America and elsewhere in slavery. I said that. So I want to contextualize that by way of what Matthew wrote, Matthew 12. Come with me to the book of Matthew, Matthew 12, and we will start at verse 12. And he said, and he said unto them, who is speaking here? Yeshua is speaking. What man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep? Remember, he has many sheep. And if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold on it? Will he not stretch his hand out to it and lift it out? How much then is a man better than a sheep? Wherefore it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath day. I have many sheep, and some have strayed, even to West Africa, even to the Caribbean, even to America. Should I not round them up again and bring them into this one flock? Should I not? Are you not to me the same as the Ethiopian, O you children of Israel? Did I not bring you up from Egypt at the same time that I brought up the Philistine there from Captor? They are descendants of over there in Crete. They're not native here. And so Zephaniah is saying, I'm going to pay them now. I'm going to destroy that land. And I'm going to make it a dung heap that it's going to be left there for animals to seek shelter. And the theologians will tell you, all this happened in the past. I'm telling you, prophecy is a cycle. And there is an ultimate fulfillment. Is this it? And so, if let's reason logically, because truth has to be existentially relevant to the times in which you live. And it has to be verifiable. It has to be. So ask yourself the question. If Yah is indeed clearing out the Gaza Strip, 26 by 5 miles, for the people who initially came from Crete, because he has plans for that place, what is he doing? Is he making it clear so he can bring the remnants that he spoke about in Isaiah chapter 11? He's done this before. Yah is the one who drives out nations and bring in new nation. He sets up kings and he takes them down at his will. Why then are we so alarmed if this is Yah? And of course, we being human, when we see pain and we see distress, it is only natural that we have some sympathy. And we try and enter into the subjective world of such people. We empathize. It's natural because we're human beings. But we cannot allow feelings to dictate how we behave. Feelings are the most unreliable thing that we have. Feelings come and the feelings go. We cannot anchor our hopes on feelings, but we can in the word of Yah, because by such must we live. By every word that proceeds out of Yah's mouth. That's what he says. And so, what is he doing? The word says, as they were coming out of Egypt, Yah said to Moses, "What's that in your hand?" A staff. And Moses said unto the people, "Fear ye not, stand still and see what? The salvation of Yah. Because those Egyptians you saw yesterday, those slave owners you saw yesterday, those slave masters you saw yesterday, those who crack the whips on your ancestors' back, I have come to repay them." Remember that slavery started when the royal line of the Shemitic Negroes went to Africa, migrated from Israel, and the Africans started selling them. And of course, the Europeans joined in and became merchants. So when you discuss slavery, when you debate slavery, when you preach slavery, don't just start in the 16th and 17th century. Go back to Deuteronomy 28 and look how we ended up in slavery. Because one thing about Yahweh, is mercies. It endures. Because even though he punishes people, he redeems them also. And he's calling Ethiopia. But then you might well say, all right, you've carried me thus far. But how do you authenticate the fact that you are saying not only is Ethiopia a special people and their descendants, but you're saying that they are the scattered people? Is that what you're saying? But I will answer. Come with me to Stephanus, chapter 3. Chapter 3, and we are going to look at verse 8 and reading on. Therefore, wait for me. Wait for whom? Wait for me, declares Yahweh, upon the day I rise up for plunder. For my judgment is to gather nations. Did you hear me? His judgment is to gather nations, to assemble, reign, to pour out on them my rage. Wow. The kind of picture we have of Yah, he's so loving. And yes, he is. Kind, considerate, patient. We're talking about the nature of Yah, his character, that's who he is. But never forget he's also a Yah of rage, wrath, because he has to deal with sin. Because the wages of sin is death. But that gift, that Yeshua, that life that he gives you and you reject him, then he's paying you. Let's read it again for emphasis. Therefore, wait for me, declares Yahweh, until the day I rise up for plunder. For my judgment is to gather nations, to assembly reign, to pour out on them my rage, all my burning wrath. For by the fire of my jealousy, all the earth shall be consumed. You can think what you want. It is spoken here. For then I shall turn unto the peoples a clean lips. I'll give them a new language, Hebrew, so that they shall call on my name Yahweh, not God, not Lord. They will call me Yahweh. To serve him with one shoulder. Did you get that? Because in Isaiah chapter 9, what are we told? The government will be on his shoulder. Isn't that what he said? So listen to verse 10. From beyond the rivers of Cush, my worshipers, my who? My worshipers, the daughter of my dispersed ones, shall bring mine offering. You see, the people in Ethiopia, where my people were dispersed, these are the dispersed ones. We know what dispersed means, scattered. When the Assyrians picked them up in 722 and brought them, it brought them all over the place and deposited them. And he said, Ethiopia is a daughter of Zion. You wonder why the Ethiopians consider themselves the true Zion. Yeah? That's what it says. It says, the daughter of my dispersed ones. He has chosen people are from Zion. And so if Ethiopia here is a daughter of a dispersed, it's a daughter of Zion. Yah speaks. So he says they're going to bring an offering to him. An offering. And we studied last week and we looked at the rationale of the eunuch who visited Jerusalem with his entourage, his retinue of people, and eventually got baptized by the evangelist Philip, that he had come to find out whether the Messiah had really come and when it was time for him to bring the harp. Let's listen to what Isaiah has to say in chapter 18. Isaiah chapter 18. And we're reading from verse 7. It says, "In that time a present shall be brought to Yahweh of hosts from a people full and smooth skin, and from a people awesome from their beginning, from Genesis, onward, a nation mighty and trampling, whose land the rivers have divided, to the place of the name of Yahweh of hosts, to Mount Zion." I'm going to take these people from Ethiopia. They're going to bring my offering that is the Ark of the Covenant, that is in Axum. And they're going to bring it as an offering because that ark belongs to Israel, not biological Israel, but spiritual Israel, the people who are obedient to me, but they are going to bring it. I'm going to welcome them in Zion. So then you say, all right, so you are saying that the Ethiopians are the dispersed. No, the royal prophet, Zephaniah, has made that statement. I'm only telling you what he said. That's what he said. And if anybody knows, he who belongs as a relative to Hezekiah, one of the good kings of Judah, from the house of David, he would have known. He would have known. So these are the people that I call upon, people who have knowledge better than myself, who say these things. So then a reasonable question to ask is, so what do you say about the people who came from Europe in 1948 and is part of the land now, claiming Jewry? In truth, I have nothing to say other than to refer you to someone who has something to say. Come with me to the prophet Moshe. Moshe, that's Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10. And Moshe, as I like to say, is a man who took dictation from Yah on Mount Sinai. And he wrote so assiduously and so long that the people did not have patience with him. They decided to fall in love with a calf instead of waiting for him. He wrote, and he's here writing of the genealogy of the people who descended from Noah. Listen to him. And this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Yawan and Tubal and Meshech and Taras. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz and Ripa and Togarmah. And the sons of Yawan, Elisha and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these, the coastland people we just spoke about. We talked earlier in Zephaniah chapter 2 what Yah was going to do to the coastland people. He says, these coastland peoples of the nation were separated into the lands, everyone according to his language, according to the clan and their nation. Moses, received this from Yah on Mount Sinai and said, the descendants of Japheth, the Ashkenazi, who make up 90+% of those claiming Jewry in Israel, he says they're Gentiles. Now, obviously, when you read this, you're not sure what to make of it. But if it's Yah's word, then it's Yah's word. And we cannot but to accept what Yah says. So let's close on this. Let's come with me to 1 Kings, that's Melech, and we are going to look at chapter 1, 1 Kings, because notice I've only called upon credible people for evidence. I've not cited anyone who is out of sync with reality. No, I've not done that. And here is one that I think you would have to agree is credible, is King David, because it's his tabernacle that is going to be established. And so let's look at 1 Kings, that's Melachim Aleph, and let's look at verse 33. And the word says, and the sovereign, that's the king, said to them, take with you the servants of your master, and you shall have Shlomo, that's Solomon my son, rule. Rule? He says he's going to rule, but let him ride on my own mule and take him down to Gihon. And there, Zadok, the priest, and Nathan, the prophet, shall anoint him sovereign over Israel and blow the shofar. Take my son down to the Gihon River. The Gihon River that encompasses all of Ethiopia is here, the Gihon Spring, meaning Gush Fort, is in Israel, and David wants to take him down there, bearing in mind that the time would come when his own son would have a child, according to the Kibronikers, with an Ethiopian woman. Did you see that? Now, people try to separate this and make no connection, but I say this to you, and perhaps it's pure conjecture. But based on the scripture, it's reasonable to draw that inference that this Gihon River that started in the Garden of Eden and surrounds Ethiopia and is part of that Nile River that runs over 4,000 miles, the longest river in the world. I believe it seeps underground and re-emerges in Israel, the Gihon Spring. I think that's what happened. And Yah can do that. That's Yah. And David recognized the connection between Jerusalem and with Ethiopia. Bring him down here and let him be king. Let him be king. And perhaps the Queen of Sheba understood this. And so Yah wants us to know that this Ethiopia that we're talking about, because in Ezekiel chapter 38, Ethiopia is going to be part of that body of people who's going to come against the land of Israel in the last days, Ethiopia. But we don't know whether it's Eritrea, we don't know whether it's Sudan, Somalia, or the East African country we call Ethiopia, but we know Ethiopia. So when we hear of Ethiopia, don't just think it's an East African country. It was wider than that. And at one time, through Ascomite Empire. It includes Saudi Arabia. It included all these countries. So the next time we watch the news or read the word, do it in context of the word, because what we're seeing here in Gaza and other places might not just be the frivolous war that we think it is. It may well be prophecy. So let's think on it. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.
Amen.